On March 2nd, 1987, to celebrate its 50th anniversary, Canon made a stunning announcement. Canon unveiled a new line of cameras and lenses. The EOS line was a stark departure from its previous cameras, offering auto everything, that is, autofocus, auto exposure, auto wind, and automatic rewind. All of these cameras would be battery dependent, and there would be no upgrade path or compatibility with previous lenses and bodies. And for its anniversary, it instantly orphaned every FD mount camera and lens in existence. So the second part of the announcement came as quite a surprise to longtime Canon users, or even first-time amateurs, who probably had bought a Canon camera maybe the month before, to learn that their system would no longer be supported, and in fact, all development on future bodies and lenses would stop. I should note that there was one final Canon body, but it was manufactured by Cosina. In this video, we'll be taking a look at that first model, the EOS 650, and we'll see what it's like today to handle this camera. The abandonment of the FD mount and Canon's decision not to offer any forward compatibility really left a bad taste in many people's mouths. This did not sit well with many longtime Canon users. I believe the Nikon users at the time sort of gloated and smiled secretly. This is the first model, the Canon EOS 650. And it's actually quite a large camera, and you can see how the shape of this camera really dictated and really set the standard for the shape of other cameras to come. Not only Canon, but certainly when Nikon, Pentax, Minolta, Olympus didn't really get too much into the autofocus cameras, but for many of the camera makers who did, this built-in hand grip really became a standard feature, and certainly it's one that is featured on, I wouldn't say all cameras today, but most cameras today. The EOS 650 had an LCD on the top of the camera, and it's where it displayed all the pertinent information. Over here, I guess you could call it your mode dial. This is where you turned on the camera. So for example, in this, it would show you how many shots you had. It would show you what mode you're in. So P meant program auto exposure. Let's see, manual exposure, time value, which is shutter priority, AV, which is aperture priority, and depth. I'm not sure what depth is. I don't have a manual for this. I'm just not really sure what it is. You could dial in exposure compensation by holding down this EXP comp button and then turning the dial on the top of the camera. I guess you could refer to this as a command dial. It was fairly simple to use. The viewfinder display was pretty simple. It had, and we'll show this, displayed both the aperture and the shutter speed. There is confirmation focus in the viewfinder. As you can see, this actually focuses fairly quickly. If we recall, the Pentax MEF did not focus quickly and was actually very large, very heavy, and not really that pleasant of an experience. This Canon camera also introduced fairly standard equipment, the kit zoom, and that would be a zoom that had moderate wide angle to moderate telephoto. The zoom range expanded over the years. It began with this modest 2x zoom, 35 to 70. And in one of the final iterations, this is this is version 2 of the kit lens, and this is a 28 to 80. The aperture range for this lens is 3.5 at the wide end and 5.6 at the telephoto end. This one, I believe, is 3.5 at the wide end and 4.5 at the telephoto end. So, still rather slow lenses. In order to satisfy those photographers who wanted fast lenses or single focal length lenses, often called prime lenses, Canon then had to produce an entire range of lenses to fit their needs. The outside shell of the body is plastic, and you can hear that. This is a rubber-like covering. And here's where you remove the battery. The first Canon EOS did not accept AA batteries. Instead, it used, here we are. Yeah, so the battery designation for this this set is 2CR5. Essentially, it looks like two 123 type 123 lithium batteries that are in a special holder. However, these batteries are not removable. They only go in one way. And one of the things that's happened through the years is these coverings have really just come loose. So I'm going to have to rebond that. I think that really just needs some contact cement. Take care of that. I don't know what the capacity is of these batteries. It probably was sufficient to run it for, I don't know, a couple months, maybe a year or so. I just don't know. Like many of Canon cameras, it had an autofocus and manual. One thing about this lens is the actual physical length of the lens never changes. However, you can see that the lens elements do slide in and out. But they constructed it in a way that the maximum length of the lens would never change. The viewfinder is very simple. There's no diopter adjustment, so there's no ability to make any adjustments for your eyeglasses. Opening the back, push this button, slide this little switch down, and the back pops open. You have a lot going on here. I'm going to guess that you probably just tuck your film leader in here and start shooting. There's a small little set of buttons here, and these likely are to handle handle the date and things like that. Actually, it looks like these are the buttons you use to adjust your ISO. It had these small little gold contacts, and I believe that was for reading those barcodes that were on rolls of film. The back itself, the channels in here do not use foam, so that's a bit different. So that's actually refreshing to see. This hand grip is not removable aside from taking it off so you can change the batteries. On the bottom, very simple, all you have is your tripod socket, which is in alignment with the center of the lens. This is fairly comfortable to hold. I think for most users, this is a very, very, very simple camera to use. All you do is zoom and take your photo, and that's it. If you want to focus manually, you would take this off of AF, switch it to M, and then turn your focusing ring. It's not really a great experience because you can actually feel yourself turning the gears that are in the lens. I'm going to guess that most users, well, you know what? It's really hard to say. You are talking about an entire audience that probably was bred on manual focus cameras, so being confronted with autofocus, perhaps they found it very freeing, for example, of having to focus because now all they had to do was zoom and compose their photo and take it. Canon obviously hit on something here because its EOS series was its EOS film series was a long-running series. Probably it paved the way for other camera makers, or it forced them, I think, believe its popularity and its sales. And as you recall, at a certain point they brought in Andre Agassi. He was sort of like the official spokesman for the Canon EOS cameras. Probably combined with that and its ease of use, it really forced other camera makers to start investing and start releasing their own similar models with autofocus, auto wind, auto exposure, auto rewind. So why didn't Canon offer any backward compatibility? Well, for starters, it couldn't. There was no way to do it. Well, there was a way to do it, but not without compromising optical quality. So let's compare this to a Canon A1. So what we want to look at is we want to look at film plane to lens flange. So when we look at film plane to lens flange, it will give you an idea of where the lens mount begins. So for this, I would say it's going to be approximately, probably a bit more than that, let's say 45 millimeters. With the Canon AE1, that was only 40 millimeters. So with the FD mount cameras having that much shorter film plane to lens flange distance, by 5 millimeters, if you wanted to attach an FD mount lens, that lens would have to sit 5 millimeters closer to the film plane, and that's really a physical impossibility. If it had been a greater distance, then all you really had to do was come up with a spacer, which is how many mirrorless cameras work today with the various adapters that they have for legacy lenses. But with Canon making its future cameras in such a manner, it really became an impossibility. So Canon likely just wanted to move on and not worry about that, particularly when it saw its future in autofocus cameras. Now, if you recall, I did mention that Canon offered forward compatibility with all of its EOS mount lenses. And so this is a newer lens, as you can tell. See, it has no problem focusing. And once again, if you want to put it on manual focus, it was very simple. Just slide that switch on the lens to MF, and then you grab the front of the ring and focus. This is a smoother experience. If you recall this one, you really had to tug you really had to exert more force than necessary to focus. This one actually turns almost too easily. Let's take a look and see what this camera weighs. This is not a lightweight camera, and that certainly shows that it is at 2 pounds 1.1 ounces, or 2 pounds 1 ounce. What about the Canon A1, since we've been using that for some comparisons? Let's remove its lens cap. And the A1 comes in at 1 pound 11 ounces. So that means that the Canon EOS 650 is, let's see, 6 ounces heavier. It's not a half a pound, but it is a significant amount of weight. I chose not to rate this camera because I didn't have any experience with it and I've never shot it. If I were forced to provide a rating for this camera, it probably would be in that 8.7, 8.8 range, maybe perhaps 8.9, 8.9. What's really important about this camera is that it was the beginning of a new era, both for Canon, obviously, but also for photography. In many ways, this set up Canon very well when digital photography began to take over, because it had an entire line of bodies and lenses that were well suited for the conversion to digital photography. Not that Nikon and some of the others weren't, but it's just simply because Canon was, I think, more flexible as a company, as a photography company, to be able to look at its products in a dispassionate manner and make the decisions that it needed to. If you recall, Canon was also the first company to drop its film cameras. So if you were to ask me, why did Canon entirely abandon the FD mount and not offer any backward compatibility? I think it just didn't want to have to deal with legacy lenses, and I think it's at a certain point it just decided to cut that cord completely and force all of its users to a new platform, and it would just deal with the blowback and the repercussions. And so this is the start of the modern Canon camera, and it all started here with the EOS 650. If you were a Canon user at the time and you remember all this, feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you'd like me to take a look at another camera in the future, also leave a comment below or send me an email at contact@camera-talk.net. And hope to see you on the next video.